How did I get my start? My mother was a gospel singer. I grew up in Tennessee and got moved to Detroit with my family. And there, my mother was still singing and that, and I started going to a lot of places and meeting a lot of entertainers. And then one day I saw Sam Cooke, and I thought, man, he's got it. And then one day a friend took me and saw Jimmy Reed. And then I went home and asked my mother to show me how to play guitar. And she started teaching me these gospel songs. I said, no, you don't need things of rock and roll. And she said, well, she knew a Ricky Nelson song. She showed me that. So I started doing that, Ricky Nelson. And then a promoter came to me and asked me, would I like to play a gig in Ohio with my band? And I said, well, who is it? He said, well, you're going to be playing with Chuck Berry. I said, my God. So one day I would hear I'm just a kid. I'm on stage playing with Chuck Berry. The crowd went wild, and I was learning about rock and roll. Chuck Berry. Over at United Sound, I was doing some session work, pre-chord thing and playing, and a guy named Joe Swift, who's a bass player. He said, hey man, he says, I'm doing a gig with Etta James. I'm gonna play bass, you wanna play rhythm guitar with Etta James? And I said, I got 8 shows. I said, all right. And so I began with Etta James right there, and so I tell you, that was my big thing with Etta James. She's quite the lady, she can sing. Well, you don't have to say my big break was with a cat named Alice Cooper. First I thought it was a girl band, but it's a bunch of guys. I had a band called Rockin Reggie Band, and we were in Detroit playing all these things. We became friends. He went to Chicago to do an album on Warner Brothers called Killer, and he asked me to come on up and sing. I went up there and did Be My Lover, some background vocals, and Rick Derringer was doing some session work with him. We became friends, the Cooper Band, and he said, well, hey, Rockin, I'm going to Puerto Rico. Go down and go with us, man. We're going to do a new project. Went down there, and that's where Schools Out began to be developed, and we began to work on that. I was a session player. Went up to New York and cut some of the songs, and that became a gold record, a million seller, and I got my first gold record with Alice on that. I co-wrote $1 Billion Babies with him. And then that went like #1 in 12 countries. And so I have to say, oh, Alice Cooper, you're the guy responsible to help Rockin Reggie climb them charts. My favorite band was the Beatles, and one day John Lennon came into my life. I became friends with John. I worked with John, played bass, played on some of his records, and I have to say that probably John Lennon, one of the Beatles, got without a doubt, and I have to say that was my proud moment when I worked with John Lennon. I met legendary Seymour Heller, the manager of All the Stars, and he offered me a 5-year contract and moved me to Las Vegas to play with the legendary Liberace. Boy, I tell you, it was a trip. That's what I call it, Mr. Showmanship. One day I met Billy Graham and became friends, and he introduced me to Johnny Cash and did a crusade with him up in Las Vegas, just sung, a little bit, and from that I ended up started doing gospel music. Before long I've done 16 gospel albums. That's part of my heritage, and that's my heart. Long live rock and roll.